1% of dudes rapping, they ain't nice as me. 98% ain't live the same type of life as me. The judge gave me life and then they sent me where the life is be. That level 4 with depth and vice, the type of stuff they like to see. Two choices, fight or flee. I refuse to die a chump. I never been a mark, but damn, it's scary when that riot jump. I seen dudes cry, get pumped, and some sexually brutalized. Knew a dude who lost his life and he was only doing 5 year-long racial fights when homie all you do is ride. Lonely days and nights up in a hole causing suicide. From the moment you arrive, you see the Mexican mafia, AB skinheads with big giant swastikas, pro-black philosophers, the BGF, the Kumi, and Muslims who will murk you from the nation to the Sunni. That MS was loony, quick to ride up on they rival. Even Christians went to church, hide knives up in a Bible. Political and tribal, the Crips and Damus, the Long Beach, the Hubs and the Dubs and the Grooves, the IE, the Bakersfield, the Dago Pyrus, the Hustlers quick to roll, the gangsters don't move, whatever click you choose.
Hey, what's cracking YouTube? It's your boy 16 to Life, and I'm back like I'm on parole violation, man. Y'all already know what it is, man. We got an interview jumping off today, man. We got a good one coming in for you today, man. So I was scrolling on YouTube, man, and I happened to run across this brother from Texas, man. He was talking about the brutalities of the Texas prison. And so I sat and watched the interview. I sat and watched the video, a couple of videos of his actually, and they was really good, man. So I want to introduce you guys to OG Bloodshot Red, man. He served 30 years straight in the Texas prison, man. Hey, so thank you for coming on my show. It's a pleasure to have you here today, man. How you been doing?
Oh, man, first off, it's a pleasure to be here on your show, man. You know, I've been doing good, man. You know, still adjusting to this freedom. But, man, I've been doing real good, man. Real good.
And so let the folks know how long you've been out.
Man, I stepped out of Texas Department of Criminal Justice June 14, 2023.
Okay, so maybe about 3 years or whatever. So in my mind, when I was out for 3 years, I still was relatively, you know, that was still relatively fresh because the brother done 30 years in prison, man. That is an extremely long time, man. So, you know, those are a lot of adjustments to make. What year was it when you went to prison?
Man, I went to prison in 93. It was at the end of 93.
Okay, so yeah, so that was before social media, all these cell phones and all this old type of stuff. So I'll ask you that later on, you know, about what has been some of your adjustments that you've been having to make coming back into the world. But so let's start off. Where did you grow up at?
Man, I grew up in a small area outside of Houston. Single parent mom, sibling, one sister, one brother. You know, before that, I was living in San Antonio with my grandmother. And so those two areas right there is where I practically, you know, pretty much grew up at.
Okay, and so do you mind giving us, you know, like a time period of either when you graduated or when you was born, so we can kind of get an idea of, you know, the age and period you grew up in?
Oh yeah. You know, I was born in 71, man, 72 area and era. And you know, it was simple then, you know, it was simple. Growing up in a small area, man, it was real simple, you know, all black neighborhood, you know, everybody all the streets were black, you know, and man, we ran up and down the streets and just had fun with each other, you know, and just played and everything, you know, you go in anybody's yard, you know, and it was just real simple, man. It was real simple, man. It's a simple, fun life growing up.
Hey, hearing you say all that, man, honestly, I had to hold back a smile because I was born in the same 71, same exact setting as you, small town. So I know exactly what you're talking about, man. Everybody was friends. Your friend's mother was like, you know, people you highly respected. You know, you spent the night at these people's house. You see these people everywhere. So it was just a great amount of respect, you know, for your folks, y'all, for black people, man. And so when did the gangs and all that type of stuff start hitting heavy?
Well, I actually got introduced to the gangs in California. But as far as like in Texas, you know, overall, you had little cliques. You had, you know, like I used to run with a gang called Chow Dog Posse, right? In junior high, you know, We, used to fight and, things like that. It wasn't nothing real serious. We'd be up at the Whataburger beating people up and stuff, just, tripping on weekends and stuff. But as far as like the Bloods and the Crips, I think San Antonio was one of the first areas that I actually heard. I'm not saying that was the first area, but the first area I heard where
Right.
Bloods and Crips were cracking it off out there, and it was some guys from California that came out there. Out the Altadena blocks had came out there, and some BSVs had came out there, and those were like the two major areas. Gangs that was in that area. Fort Worth. I heard about Fort Worth a little later. Not saying that they wasn't the first ones, but just to me hearing about it was a little bit later, and it's probably because they're farther off from where I grew up than San Antonio was, and then I had been living in San Antonio with my grandmother and things like that. So that's probably why I heard about them first.
And okay, so and you said something that I wanted to ask you about. You said that you was first introduced to the gangs in California. So you actually came out to California?
Yes, sir, I did. I've been out there, spent a lot of time out there.
So about what age was you introduced to it? And I want to ask you like maybe a 2 or 3 part question. And had you seen the movie Colors yet when you was introduced to it? And what was that like finally seeing, the infamous Crips and Bloods and the culture up close and personal?
I had seen Colors. I'm gonna be straight up. It didn't really leave a big influence on me. It was just a movie that had a lot of hype to it. I went and saw it, and it didn't really. As an adult now, thinking back, it might have did influence me, but the way that I was actually, introduced to the gangs in real life was a lot different than that. So I don't really think it had an influence on me. Going to California.
Right. And no, excuse me, I appreciate your question, but no, your answer. But I was saying that once you actually got to California, and then you was able to see the Bloods and Crips up close and personal, how was that like? With all the fanfare and stuff that was going around.
Now, when I actually it was a shock to me, just back then during that time in the 80s and the early 90s, it was a lot of camaraderie amongst each other, everybody at the parks, everybody together, just chilling, the loyalty and the friendship amongst each other, just it was something that was different than what I had experienced, back home, just running with some dudes or whatever, that had a huge impact on me making the decision of joining the gang.
And what area did you come to when you came out to California?
I was in Compton, man, yeah.
Right. Because I know, when I first came to LA of the Bay and age, when I, became familiar with, the Crips and the Bloods and this and that, I was surprised, I guess, at how close they actually were. I'm riding in a car with a friend of mine who was from LA, and I see a Blood on the payphone, and then maybe literally like a block away, it's a gang of Crips, and I'm like, dang, they right there on each other. So that's something that kind of like made me realize like this stuff is kind of serious. And so when it hit the area that you was living in back in Texas, about what year you say the gang started hitting heavy and just changing things?
Well, outside of San Antonio and outside of Fort Worth, I would say probably about 92, about around that 92 area, 93 area is when, for sure, 93, because when I went to the county, it was a lot of Crips in the county. It's never really been a lot of Bloods out here, but it was a lot of Crips, and I was in the tank with a lot of them. So about 92, 93 area. The area that I was in out here, not so much gangs. It's small, but the other areas around, about 92, 93.
Uh-huh. And so How were the Crips and the Bloods from Los Angeles? How were they received out there when they came out there? Was they accepted? Did dudes rally against them? Because I've been to Denver and I've seen a little both. You have some dudes who who accept and embrace those dudes from California. Then you have other dudes who out there be like, man, forget them Cali dudes, man. Them dudes just to get up out of here with that bull stuff, and they create their own gangs a lot of times to rival the gangs that's coming from other places, specifically California.
Well, early on when they first came out, they were like celebrities. I ain't gonna lie, they were like celebrities. With the Colors movie and everything, and then they were bringing a lot of work out here, So a lot of guys was, doing that for them or whatnot, and just gradually, they would take some back with them, and then they would come back home, and then they would put on the set or whatever, But at that time they were accepted. Everybody accepted them. Everybody just, pretty much, like I say, looked up to them. But now, all of these years later, not so much, because a lot of the guys out here now have made their own, name for themselves, and do it the way that they feel like they want to do it, and not so much like California. You know what I'm saying? And so now when guys come out, because this guy's in prison, it's a lot of Cali guys in prison out here, and they just the average everyday Joe in there, ain't nobody looking up to them. Ain't nobody, it is what it is. And a lot of them really not even active in prison just because it's so different than it is out there in Cali.
Right. And so, of course, we see the name OG Bloodshot Red. So how did you decide to, join the Blood gang out there, and if you don't mind, what Blood gang or not, it's all up to you.
Yeah, no, it's an open book. I'm part of Treetop 900 block off of Hickory and Rosecrans. Not 400 block, 900 block. We 900 block. And it was guys that was coming out here that was putting work out here or whatnot. And, they started taking me back with them, and just being around them, staying out there, a couple of times, and, going back and forth with them out, it just, I wanted to get on, and I got put on, and came back out here and, started doing my thing, had a little work they was putting me on with. And, man, I got, a short-lived freedom after that, because I went to prison, I got popped and went to prison.
And I just want everybody out there to pay attention to what he said, man. He said it was short-lived, so he had a little while in the gangs. We'll get to that. Then he went to prison for a long stretch. And so what ultimately led you to prison?
I had caught a robbery case, and I was out on bond. And while I was out on bond, I caught a drug case, possession with intent to deliver a controlled substance. And that's what got me locked up right there. And so I got 20, because I know you're going to ask. I got 20 for the robbery, and I got a life sentence for the drug case. Ran concurrent.
Damn, man. They gave you a life sentence for drugs?
Yes, sir.
Note to self. Stay the fuck out of Texas. Trying to sell some dope.
Yeah, man, for real.
How much dope did they crack you with, man?
It wasn't even like that. I ain't even going front. It wasn't even like that, man. It was, it was a little bit, but it wasn't nothing to the extent of nothing like that. But I was out there, man. I wasn't even no big time. I was out there. I was selling like maybe some quarters, 50 packs, 100 packs, stuff like that. So I wasn't even, I wasn't on like that. I ain't even going front.
Yeah, that's for those who not familiar with the weight and stuff. That is a brutal amount of time for a relatively small amount of narcotics. That's really basically just enough to really serve the neighborhood, man, for a couple of hours, and then you run out and you go get some more. So on the level, like I say, for those who don't know the intricacies of the drug game, that's really not a lot. That's, man, out here in Cali, you get caught with that like in 93 back in then, maybe 2-3 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, 7 years tops. That's a large amount of time. So was it a shock to you to receive all that time to receive a life sentence?
It was such a shock, Chill. Man, I knocked my attorney out.
What, in the courtroom?
Right there in the courtroom, homie. And I got 10 for that, stacked on top of the life.
So if you don't mind, run us through that a little bit. So you set the scenario for us. So you sitting in the courtroom, you about to get sentenced. Or had you had any idea what you was facing? So take it from there.
Okay. In Texas, possession with intent to deliver a controlled substance carries a sentencing guideline from 5 years to 99 or life. That's the sentencing guideline. It's that broad. So I knew it was a chance that I would get some time. I didn't think that amount of time, but this is the reason why I hit my attorney. Because I went to a jury trial, and my trial attorney advised me after they came back with a guilty sentence. He advised me to recuse the jury and be sentenced by judge. And he made it sound pretty good, right? He said that because the people had found me guilty of the charge, that I would probably get a harsh sentence. And he said he knew the judge, gave me this drag about, the judge, pretty fair and whatnot. So, I'm listening to my attorney. And, man, they deliberated for a little bit, and he came back out and he sentenced me to life in the Texas Department of Criminal Justice. So
what I'm hearing is out there, it's a little different from California. So you was found guilty by the jury. And so the jury, if you had chose, the jury could have came up with your time.
Well, the sentencing guidelines of it, I guess. I was young. I really don't know the whole ins and outs of the thing, but this was the advice that my attorney had gave me, and so I went to it. I went for it, and when I got that sentence, I hit him.
Yeah, because it sounds like he was telling you that you kind of had an option to either let the judge give you the time or let the jury recommend some time. So that was crazy. So when you fired on him in the court, what happened? Because I'm sure it was unexpected. So what happened then?
Man, the DA, the bailiff, and some other people, they just rushed me. They just rushed. For me, I'm gonna kind of put you in the mind state when he told me what I had, when he told me the amount of time that I had, and then he was talking and he told me to go, you sign the paper, put your fingerprint, and I was kind of like in a vague state. It was like a dream to me. And I'm like, man, and he's reading, this legal stuff off, right, while I'm going over here signing the paper. And I'm like, did he say life? So when I come back, I asked him, I said, so you mean I got a life sentence? And he said, yeah. Now my attorney is like right here, kind of like putting his stuff together on the desk. And man, I punched him. I just punched him, man.
And so at that time, Red, how old were you, baby? Maybe about 21, 22?
Yeah, 21 turning 22.
And so at that time, as things were then, as far as getting a life sentence, did that mean that you would ever get out, or did that mean that you were stuck?
For me, man, being young, we commit crimes and we really don't even know anything about the law. You know what I'm saying? We don't know nothing about how much time. It's just life to me.
100, right.
It's just life. I don't know how many years I had to serve on. It was just a life sentence. And from watching movies and stuff, life sentence is like all day. It's you know what I'm saying? It's eternity.
Right.
And so that's just where my mind state was at, because though the 20-year sentence was ran concurrent with the life, and the 20-year sentence was an aggravated sentence, that made my life sentence aggravated because it was ran concurrent. So under that, I had to do 15 years before I was eligible for parole on the life sentence, and so, man, my mom was in there, my aunt was in there, and man, they screaming and yelling and stuff, man, crying and stuff. And she seeing them people, slam me and everything. So, thinking back on it, man, I was just a young reactionary, man, without, just tripping, man, and I look back on this crazy, man, but I have a lot of regrets about it, man. I ain't gonna lie.
Right, most definitely. And so what was it like upon you entering the prison? At that time, were there a lot of Crips and Bloods? Were they going at it with each other? Was there structure? Give us your take on that.
Okay, well, before that, I got more time too, though, right? While I was in the county.
Oh, okay. So let's hear about that. So for getting off on your lawyer.
Well, okay, I got that right. I got that time. So I had a 20 of life, Then I got 10 stacked on top of the life. And while I was waiting to be transferred to Texas Department of Criminal Justice, out of retaliation, a patrolman off the street and like 3 COs that work in the county ran into my cell with a taser, and we got into a physical altercation, right? Now, to be honest, I was the one that actually got injured. I had got 7 stitches in my eye, right? And some in my mouth. But they indicted me again for aggravated assault on a peace officer. So I go to TDC, then I come back on a bench warrant and go to trial again. Well, I was about to go to trial again, but I copped out for 25 because I wasn't trying to get another life sentence stacked on top of it. So they actually stacked the 25 on top of the life. I mean, on top of the 10. So I had a 20, a life, stacked 10, and a stacked 25. And I had to make parole on each one of those consecutively.
So basically what you're saying is those sentences you was doing all those sentences separately. And exactly. You had to go to the board and get found out here. They call it suitable or whatever, but basically you had to go to the board and they say, okay, we're giving you parole on each separate charge.
Yes, sir. Yes,
see,
sir.
that's very different, right? I know dudes here who have went to the board and they have different cases, different, murder charges. And like me, myself, I had an attempted murder and then I had a murder. But so when you go in there, they basically talk about everything, and if they find you, eligible to go home, it's for everything. It's not for each separate time. So that's extremely different. That's got to be tough out there.
When you're doing consecutive times, you're only doing time on that particular sentence. Those other ones, I mean, no good time, no nothing is accounted to those other sentences until you make parole off of the initial sentence. Then it'll give you on your paperwork begin next sentence, and then that's when that one actually goes into the computer and you're actually serving time on it.
Yeah, wow, that's tough, right? Because like I say, I know a friend who had 2 separate life sentences, but he went to the board on one and he had the time in, and they let him out. So yeah, that's rough right there. And so what was it like, when you finally did make it to prison out there, as a youngster? Were the Crips and Bloods going at it with each other? Were they structured in there? What was that like?
Well, in Texas prison, man, it was always more Crips than Bloods, always. And I mean, in actuality, when we stepped on the yard, we actually got checked by the Crips. And what I mean, you had to fight to walk the yard, and so it was like that up until like the 2000s, because it was not a lot of Bloods, and you had to prove that you was gonna hold your own, as a Blood, because if not, you wasn't gonna be able to rep.
And so did you ever happen to run across the dude Percy? I see him a lot on YouTube.
Yeah, I heard about Percy, but I don't necessarily know him like that. Yeah, I don't know him like that.
How many? Because I know in California they have like 32 prisons. How many out there in Texas do they have? Do they have a lot of them?
I read in a Texas Monthly, right? I read in a Texas Monthly, which is like a magazine that talks about Texas as a whole state, right? And what it actually said was, you can drive 100 miles in any direction and pass some type of a correctional facility.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how big Texas is.
Right.
And I'm going to say it's like about 115 correctional facilities. And that's state jails, maximum security prisons, rehab facilities, things like that, FI6 programs and stuff. So it's like about 113, 115 of them.
So the racial dynamics that's real prevalent out here in California, the separating of the races out there, like out here, blacks only sell with blacks, Hispanics only sell with Hispanics, so on and so forth. Is it that same type of makeup out there, or how does that work out there in Texas?
Okay, when I first went into prison, prior to me going into prison was segregated in the 80s. When I went into prison, they had what was called racial restriction. And if you were a part of like a Mexican gang, or if you were part of a white gang, or if you was a part of like a black gang, Mandingo Warriors or something like that, you could be eligible for being able to house with your own race. And that was in effect for like about the first 5 years that I was in prison. And then they stopped doing that, and they actually force integrate housing here. They actually force integrated it. It's very seldom that you see same races in the house. They force integrated housing.
Because I remember when I was in prison at one point in time, I can't recall the specific year, but they was talking about doing that in California, but dudes was not going for that. But so let me ask, so what happens? Okay, so when you got these integrated housing out there, you know, you may be in the cell with a Hispanic or whoever, white dude. What happens then when a racial incident jumps off on the yard, whether it be a just a grouping up or especially a physical confrontation? How do they expect a dude?
No, go ahead. My bad. I thought you was finished.
How do they expect a dude to go into the cell, you know, with somebody that's just have a standoff or a confrontation on the yard? And have you heard of a situation like that, and what occurs?
Okay, by policy, right? When a riot happens on the yard, by policy, nobody is supposed to go back to the cell. That's policy. You are supposed to go straight to lockup. You know, you would just, and they're going to lock everybody that's on the yard up that was active in the riot, and then doing a thorough investigation and find out exactly what happened and who's who and things like that. With the situation that I did a video on, they were actually trying to force us back into the cells, and it was a racial riot. It was Bloods and Texas Mexican Mafia, and they were actually trying to force us in there. And the thing was, they had put them back in the cell. We went to the infirmary. A lot of us had went to the infirmary with helicopters, life flighted and things like that. And we were in handcuffs, and the COs were actually trying to make us go back in the cells in handcuffs while our cellies were unhandcuffed. And so we refused housing. They had already tore up all our property. Pictures and stuff was kicked up under the door, radios and things, everything was destroyed, and they were actually trying to make us go back into the cell.
Yeah, because I was going to say, in theory, that sounds, what you was talking about, it sounds, it sounds okay where dudes, because when you get caught up in a riot, dudes, everybody on the yard goes to the hole and so on and so forth. But we know sometimes they don't get everybody that's involved in the riot. You have people that sliding away, getting away, or whatever. And so, yeah, that's what I was wondering. How does that work? Now you're going back into the cell with somebody that was just trying to kill you. So yeah, that seems crazy. Now, you just mentioned in that riot that when you guys got into it with the Texas Mexican Mafia, that a lot of Bloods was life flighted and going to infirmary and stuff. So it sounds like you guys got the short end of the stick in that one, or how did that work?
Man, for sure. I mean, like I said, it's always Bloods. It's, man, look, on a yard, it's three pods. Each pod has 3 sections. It's 144 on each pod. So you do the math. If you hit a yard and you got 8 Bloods on that yard, that's considered deep. That's considered deep. So we were totally outnumbered. I mean, we've always been outnumbered, on the yard. I mean, everywhere I've been, we've been outnumbered. I mean, by like double and triple digits. It was not a lot of Bloods back then. So we most definitely got the short end of the stick,
And then, so of course, what I'm hearing is that when you guys got into it with the Mexican Mafia out there, it was exclusively just the Bloods, not the whole black population.
Well, on that particular, in that situation on the yard right then, it was blacks, period. But because blacks that was not Bloods, they really wasn't trying to fight. They were really just trying to get away, because they felt like, it didn't really involve them. But on the Mexican side, they was poking anything that had melanin in them. You know what I'm saying? Anything that was black. Yeah, so.
And so, yeah, that's crazy right here in that. So how does the black population on out there feel about that type of stuff. There hadn't been any type of, meeting of the minds that, hey man, when we get into it with another race, we all come together regardless of affiliation, or how does that work?
Okay, back when I first went in, like I said, the gangs had really just started, populating the penitentiary. But prior to that, you had Houston and you had Dallas, the two black cities in Texas, right? And those were basically the two major cars, Dallas car and Houston car. And so all of the small little gang politics that we have going on now, it wasn't really acting like, it was different. Anytime a race happened, a riot happened, Houston and Dallas was going to come together. You didn't have all of this, well, I'm a Pyru, or I'm a Blood, or I'm a Crip, or I'm a Gangster Crip. You didn't have all of that. That was one thing that pretty much weakened us in Texas prisons, is because of that division now.
Right.
If the Crips over here against the offense and the Bloods over here in a riot, you might have some get in it. But I mean, for the most part, they're going to be like, man, that's them fools, man. And that's just it really, really messed up the system.
And it's crazy to hear you say that, right? Because basically what you're saying is pretty much the same problems out here that, the history of blacks in the California prisons have showed us, when you had the BGF and, they was trying to unite pretty much all the blacks back in the 60s, and that time period. But then once you had Crips, you had Bloods coming to prison, you had these different gangs. And so now people are separating themselves, and it's really breaking up the unity and the strength of what's needed in a place where you have racial tension. And honestly, homie, when we have whites or Hispanics, they gonna come together as a whole, and by you doing all that time and I doing that time, we have to salute them for that, for being able to figure out, being able to see the bigger picture. And for whatever reason, we can't seem to do it, and so it really weakens us at a time when our lives could be on the line.
Yeah, for real, man. Chill, not to get real philosophical, but I believe it's like, we all have pride. The whites have pride, Hispanics have pride, and the blacks have pride. But our pride, instead of uniting us, it divides us. And I'm saying that to, like, I don't need no help, man. I can stand by myself. That's the mentality. But with the other races, they understand that there's power in their unity. You know what I'm saying? They understand that we need one another in here. But I'm speaking in Texas prison, and that's that to me, seeing that how it was with Houston and Dallas, and then when Houston started gang banging and Dallas started gang banging, now you got people from Houston, Crips over here and Bloods over here that don't mess with each other. Dallas, you got Crips over here and Bloods over here that don't mess with each other. So now you don't have that unity anymore, and it's like, man, that's their business. That ain't us. That's Crip business. That's Blood business. That ain't my business. And it just really messed up the whole structure of how things were when I first went into prison.
And it's crazy, right? Because, people don't understand if they've never been to prison, man. Prison is universal. The same problems you might have going on in Texas, you got going on in Cali. Same problems in New York, you have going on in Louisiana, so on and so forth, right? And so I talked to you, man. This is what I want to say for the viewers, right? I talked to you on the phone about 3 minutes, and I realized, man, this dude is extremely sensible. He has a lot of logic. He has all his mental faculties. Because a person don't understand, man, doing 10 years in prison can make you crazy. Doing 5 years in prison can make you crazy, man. Much less 30 straight years of all this craziness and madness that we have to endure, man. So, for this individual, Red, to come home just so mentally astute, so intelligent, so logical, because prison also can make people, it can make you angry, it can make you vindictive for a whole lot of reasons, right? So just to see you have done so much time and to come home, homie, I feel like, this is what I feel like, Red, and I'm getting a little track. I feel like I can come to Texas, hang out with you with no problem. The same way I connected with Banky Pound, man. Banky Pound to have done all that time, man. It's just some dudes, real recognize real, man. And your logic, just your intelligence. Hey, seriously, homie, salute to you, homie. Salute to you, man, for doing all that time and just to come home with a positive attitude like you have it, man, because I heard you say something, right? I was watching one of your videos, and I think this is something that's just within us as a people. You were saying that dudes out there didn't have a problem using knives, but you were saying that, man, as a black individual, dudes out there like to get out there and fight. And especially me and you growing up from the same time period, being able to slay them dogs was a rite of passage. It was something that we took pride in. So it wasn't like we was afraid to use a knife, but we just felt that if you had to pick up a knife, you was less of a man because you couldn't defend yourself. Expound on that, homie, or give us your philosophy or your ideology on that. Being I just trip on how from Texas to California or New York to wherever, we have that same, mind state.
And to me, that is two cultural differences. Because growing up, around Hispanics, they always had a knife. Young, 13, 14 years old, they got a pocket knife. Us, on the other hand, we always fought. Now, I'm not saying that they stabbed each other, but I'm saying they had knives. It was a known fact that if you did get in with, SA, man, he might have a knife. Man, watch him. On their hand, man, he probably got some hands, man, he probably can fight. So these are two cultural differences of how we grew up. And when you go into prison, and now it's like polarized in here to where, blacks over here, Mexicans over there, and you got all this tension. Us with our hands being able to fight, man, we going to that yard. If you couldn't fight, somebody was going to teach you how to fight in there. Because like I said, that is where we got our respect from. We got ours from one another, being able to fight, being able to hold your own. You could call somebody in that corner and you catch that fade and you can work clean. Man, like you say, dude gonna salute you. On the other hand, it was understood in Texas prisons that a Mexican was not supposed to fight a black head up because of the fact that if he lost, it would make all of them look bad. So anytime there was a conflict inside of a day room between a black and a Mexican, either it was going to get squashed, or if it did turn to physical, it was going to be a riot. There was not going to be a one-on-one fight between a black and a Mexican, and like I said, I just think that it's just cultural differences, man.
And that's pretty much the same out here, right? And you're 100% correct. And I think sometimes that a lot of us blacks believing that we can fight well, because if we let's keep it real, right? Let's take it past fighting a little bit. Basketball, and this is not even pertaining to blacks. This is pertaining to people, period. A person that plays basketball, a person that raps, a person that plays, a person that does tattoos, a person that cooks. A lot of times we all view ourselves better than we actually are. So for sometimes when we fight, think, oh man, I got chunkums. I can handle 2 or 3 of these people. In a setting like prison, where sometimes individuals are playing for keeps, do you feel that is a bad strategy that you just try to rely on your fists?
Well, I mean, yeah, for sure. It's like taking your hands to a gunfight. But it's the ignorance in our pride. It's the ignorance in our pride. I don't need no knife. I've literally had times to where something might be going down and it's in the air a little bit. And, dude might, come by, man, hey, man, you strapped? And I'll be like, yeah, all right, man, he's strapped. It might be my celly, man. I don't need no knife, man. I don't need no knife. I don't use no knife. And I'm just like, but it's that ignorance, it's a mental ignorance, bro. It's either that or he ain't never been through anything. Because if you go through something enough, and you getting some bad results, you're gonna switch up, bro. You're gonna switch up. Right. And it was one thing that we knew for sure, Chill. It was one thing that we knew for sure, without a doubt. They were bringing the knives. We knew this. 100%. It was not a doubt. I'm gonna tell you, it was so, like I told you. If you watch that video that I told you where we got in a ride with the Mexicans, when it actually happened, Chill, when Red Rooster actually did what he did, if they had been strapped then, it would have jumped off right then. But because it was pretty much mutual and everything was cool, there was no need for people to come out on the yard strapped. And that was the reason why nothing happened right then. But when they wrapped us back up and we came back out there, they gave them enough time to get their stuff. And when we went back out there, man, you know, dudes up running up and down the court playing basketball, happy to be out there on their rec yard. And they sitting over there on the ground, you know, just waiting. And when it was time to rack up, man, that's when they got us. That's when they got us.
Yeah. And so what is excuse me, I hear a lot about Tango Blast and all that stuff. When did that become prominent out there in the Texas prisons?
Okay, so when I first came in,
I mean, and could you explain for those who may not know what is Tango Blast in your answer as well?
Okay, when I first went to prison, it was only the families, you know. We got a lot of gangs in prison, man, a lot of gangs in Texas prison, but it was only the families. Now, there has always been a tango. The word tango out here is basically a slang term for just saying your town. So if a guy was associated with one of the Mexican gangs out here, but was not an actual member, you know, he could be listed as a skeena. He could be listed as, you know, a foot soldier or something like that, right? But he only represented his town. So if you asked him, man, you know, who you with, he would just say, oh, man, I'm just Tango, man. I just represent my town. But he still fell under the politics of the actual people he associated with, but he just wasn't a member. So over a period of time, you know, I talked about this in one of my videos, so I'm gonna kind of plug my video, man. Y'all go check out video, where did the Tango Blast come from? But when that break started to happen, all of the ones that represented Tango, they kind of separated themselves from the actual families, and a war started to happen, and they held their own, man. They really held their own. Now, they didn't go against all of the families. They only went against one, which was TS, which was Texas Syndicate, because that's who most of them were associated with when they made that break. And they held their own. And from that, they just bonded together, represented Tango, you know, the four horsemen, Dallas, Houston, Austin, and Fort Worth. Those were the four areas that they actually came from at the beginning. And man, they formed, and they've been holding it down. I you know, like I said, I salute them and, you know, tilt my hat to them, because they did something nobody during my time in prison had ever did, was take on, you know, as some solos, take on a organized group gang and hold their own, man. They held their own.
Right. And you mentioned something that I wanted to ask you about that I've never heard. You mentioned Mandingo Warriors.
Yeah.
What was can you expound on that a little bit?
Okay, the Mandingo Warriors were a gang that was started back during building tender and turnkey time. Now, what that is, in Texas Department of Corrections, they actually had inmates, prison inmates, that ran the prison. Turnkeys, they actually held the keys, opened, you know, locked you up, took you to lock up, beat your butt, you know, walked around with nightsticks, the whole 9 yards. And the building tenders were the ones that actually worked the cell blocks, but they were like guards. You know, they were actually like guards. They didn't have a lot of TDC officers, right? And so, from what I was told, you know, and I mean, I've heard other, you know, things too, but from what I was told was that the Mandingo Warriors were formed to protect one another, you know, the inmates, against these building tenders and these turnkeys. And so it was a black organization, you know, Mandingo Warrior, you know, it's kind of obvious. And they formed that gang. And what I was told also was, once they formed the gang and somewhat got an establishment, they started perpetrating the same things that the building tender and the turnkeys was doing to them, you know, assaulting them, you know, essaying them, and, you know, things like that. They were doing other races like that. And that kind of started a domino effect of, other gangs forming, Texas Syndicate, Texas Mexican Mafia, the AB, things like that, because, they were taking advantage of, the other inmates over a period of time.
Now, are the Mandingo boys, are they still prevalent today in the Texas prison system, or?
Not at all, bro. I mean, for one, most of the guys, like when I went in, were like on their last leg. I went in, like I say, 93. And so those guys coming, from the 80s, 70s, and 80s, they were old. They were trying to do recruiting, some youngsters, but it just couldn't get a foothold. So, I mean, right. When I left, I mean, if you ask the average inmate right now about Mandingo Warrior, they probably had never even heard of it. It's just that obsolete right now. Yeah.
Right. Because I know I'm familiar with the turnkeys, the building tier, like you was talking about. I've read a lot of books related to prison everywhere. So I've heard those terms. I've read some things related to Texas, and I had never heard of the Mandingo Warriors. So that was very interesting. You also mentioned something to me in the course of our conversation. You told me, homie, that you actually picked cotton while you was in prison. And so for an individual like myself who has read a lot of stuff relating to slavery, did that have any type of psychological, head games on you, or what? Give us how that felt, because I think that people who have not had relatives or older people, from their, black people, basically, if you're white or Hispanic, you may not be able to see the anger sometimes, man, when you read these stories and you read how they done our people. So for an individual, who is, of African descent, how did that affect you, or did it, or what,
Bro, man, I got transferred to Ellis unit, and Ellis unit is an old unit. It was built in the 30s. So it's got the fields, and what I mean by fields, it's like farm area. And, we go out there with Aggies, a garden hoe. I mean, grass would be, man, 4 or 5 feet high. And we going in. When we leave, it looked like a baseball field. So, it was always field work. But this one particular time, when I went to Ellis and we went out there, I saw cotton fields. And I'm like, we on the back of trailers, homie. I mean, it's like some Wild Wild West stuff. We on the back of trailers. And you got a guy, he's driving a tractor and he's pulling us out there. And they, I'm pretty sure y'all have the same type of mattresses that we have. We have these mattresses with these blue covers or these brown covers on them. And it's kind of like a plastic, hard, kind of coarse plastic. And they had the package, the outside of the mattresses stacked up on the last trailer. And I'm asking these dudes, I say, man, well, we got to pick cotton. And they're like, yeah, man, we finna pick cotton today. And I mean, it was just like the regular thing to them, Now, true enough, they take the cotton gin or whatever that thing is, pick the cotton, but it's still some there. And everything that's left is what we have to pick. And you have a quota. You actually have a quota that you have to fill, or you will get insufficient work, incomplete work, and which is a disciplinary case. This is the thing. You cannot pick cotton with gloves on. And the bowl that the cotton grows in, once it pops open and dries out, it's got these little points on the end. And you have to stick your hand in here to pull this cotton. Man, your fingernails bleed, fingers cut up. And I mean, they telling you they on horses, man. It's like, you ever seen Cool Hand Luke? They on horses. They got shotguns. Man, I mean, this is real. And you have to pick this cotton, bro. Man, I wanted to lay it down. I wanted to quit, Man, I was mentally, and I was really messed up, man. I mean, to me, I know it was nothing like slavery, but in my mind, I actually felt like a slave. And you have to understand, bro, we do not get paid out here for anything we do. We don't get paid anything. That's
crazy, right? Because that reminds me of a book I read. The book was called Racehorse, and it was, I believe, the setting was in Texas, and the guy had went to the pen like in the late 40s or 50s, and they was out there picking cotton, and it was crazy, and yeah, that's just crazy. And so, what if you refuse? Would would they put you in the hole or?
Okay, when you refused work, like if you were out there though, if you was out there, right? If you went out to the fields, because we would be like, man, maybe a mile or so away from the actual unit, right? The actual prison itself. They're not going to take the time to bring you all the way back, right? They might. Right. In these days right now, they do. They'll call somebody. They'll come out there with a truck and put you in there. But back then, they had a metal cage, a big metal cage, and it's made out of, you know, like a barbecue grill.
Right.
Got the little diamond, you know, cuts in.
Right.
The whole cage is made out of this, the bottom and the top and the sides. And it's sitting out there in that hot sun. It's just sitting out there. And when you lay it down, tell them you can't work no more, they put you in there. Everything you touch is scalding hot. I mean, you can't sit down, you can't stand up, everything in here. And you will stay out there for the full work detail. And then you come in with us and they're going to pull you in that trailer and lock you up. But they at that time, they were not going to make a special trip to take you back if you said that you laid it down. You was going in that trailer. In handcuffs behind your back.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so I wanted to ask you one last question. When you guys went out there to clean those fields with the Aggies and all that stuff, did they have any use for the field afterward, or was that just strictly something punitive, something just to give you guys to do?
Well, for the most part, they had a lot of vegetation crops out there, right? So a lot of times we went out, you know, and we picked, you know, carrots and potatoes and cucumbers and stuff. But for the most part, if it wasn't crop season, we just turned out just to cut grass, just to get us out into the fields and just to work us so we wouldn't be laying up all day.
Yeah, that's definitely harsh and different from California prison. So doing time out there in Texas, did you guys have your own personal TVs in your cells and Walkmans and radios? And
when I went into prison, they sold big reels and realistic radios and realistic brand radios, but no TVs in the cell. You had your little headphones. They used to, it's hot, man. They used to sell these little 6-inch fans with the little clamp on it. You clamp it on the bunk, let it blow on your head. That was all the air you was gonna get. They sold hot pots. Well, back then they sold stingers to heat your water up, a little metal stinger that you drop in a cup. But the TV, we had one TV in the day room, and the blacks and the Mexicans had to share this TV. And that was where most of our conflict came from. You know, because we might want to watch Soul Train on the weekend. They want to watch Caliente, or they want to watch Telemundo or Johnny Canales or something like that. And we can't come to no understanding. We're going to lock this boy down, and there's a riot happening behind it, you know? So it was.
And sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. I'm through. Go ahead.
And so you guys didn't come to the pretty much understanding of, okay, you guys get it one day, we get it next day, and alternate days.
I'm gonna be straight up, man. I'm gonna be straight up. We had that understanding, man. But sometimes, man, dudes, you know, just want to be difficult, man. It's just, I mean, you know, sometimes ignorant is bliss, man. And
right,
you know, it's crazy, man. But we had an understanding. Right. But a lot of times, you know, we don't have an understanding, you know, so it was just like.
And I get what you're saying 100%, man. Sometimes, despite the understanding, some dudes just don't stick with it, even though they know it might not be their day. They want to watch the basketball game, or they want to watch the whatever. They frustrated. They just not going for it.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy, man. And it seems like, okay, these are the rules we have set in stone, but somebody just that day they feeling like, man, I don't care.
Let me say this. Bro, we didn't even have telephones in the penitentiary until like 2009, 2010.
You hold on, you talking about telephones you on the wall, or you talking about cell phone?
No, I'm saying,
oh man,
on the wall, bro. You know what got us? Do you know what actually got us telephones in the penitentiary in 2009, 2010? In 2008, an inmate on death row called a senator on a cell phone and threatened him about, you know, his sentence of death and everything, you know, his death sentence that he had. And the phone call got tracked. They ran down on death row, moved all of the death row people to another unit, and the feds came in. And when the feds actually saw that we did not have phones in there, they said, look, man, y'all got to do something about, y'all got to do something about this, man. I mean, from the time I went into prison up until 2009, 2010, there was no phone in Texas prison. What they did, they would give you one call. You put in a request. You would go to a desk, and they would give you one phone call, 5-minute phone call every 90 days.
Hey, that's crazy right there. That is crazy, And I think I may have mentioned this to you on the phone, or maybe somebody else, but when I was locked up, they had like these little pamphlets, California Lifers Newsletter and other Prison News Network, these other little like pamphlets that pertain to legal laws, having life, and they would talk about the different things that was going on from prison to prison, from state to state. And I noticed then that California, we had it extremely well compared to a lot of these other prisons, especially in the area of appealing things and the appeal process. A lot of these other states, they don't got no action, man. They get dogged out. They sometimes they letters and mail get took, and they can't get certain type of magazines. And I always thought, honestly, man, that doing time in California is relatively easy, man, minus the violence and being away from your family. But with all the amenities that we get compared to these other states, we had it pretty well, man. We had it pretty well.
Another thing, everybody out in Texas does not get contact visits. I never, listen, bro, out of the 30 years that I served in Texas Department of Criminal Justice, I never had a contact visit.
All behind the glass?
All behind the glass. Every visit I've ever had was behind the glass.
Was it due to your crime? I mean, how do they figure out who gets them and who don't?
Okay. If you don't have any disciplinary infractions, because disciplinary infractions, they'll take, like with phones now, right? They'll take your phone privileges, contact visit privileges, commissary privileges, rec privileges, things like that is how they punish you, right? And when they take it for like 90 days, 60 days, things like that, right? And I mean, I stayed in a lot of trouble, just being young and in prison. So they were always going to take contact visitation because they know that's something that's real important to an individual. It gives a person an incentive to stay out of trouble, But I mean, those were one of the main. Now it's phone time. We just got tablets right before I got out of prison. We just got Securus tablets right before I got out of prison. I mean, like a month before I got out of prison, June 14th. They just had got tablets out here. So, they really use things as leverage out here, man. They really, 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 I mean, time. Well, you're going to get some time for anything you do out here in that penitentiary, man. You're going to get some time, And so it's a deterrent. It's really a deterrent, man, to try to keep the violence and things under control.
And that's crazy. I'm just sitting here thinking, man, this brother said every 90 days you get a 5-minute phone call. I mean, that's crazy, that's just that's crazy, man. And so in closing, right, I want to say thank you, homie, for coming on my channel. I want you to announce your channel once again. We want people to go check it out, man. Get his subscribers up, get it, so he can get monetized and enjoy, some of this YouTube money and all this type of stuff, man. So what's the name of your channel?
OG Bloodshot Red Prison Media.
So you guys definitely be sure to go tune into that, man. OG Bloodshot Red Prison Media, and he's got a video that's doing extremely well right now. It's I believe the name of it is The Brutalities of Texas Prison, and he talks a whole lot about things going on, man. You guys go check his content out, and I appreciate you for coming on my platform.
Man, I appreciate you having me, bro. Not to but yours, like I told you, man, yours was one of the first ones when I got out that I saw as far as had this type of content, because I didn't even know that it had it, and I mean, I was real impressed with you, man. Just everything, how you had your little setup and everything, man. So it had a big influence on me doing this right here too. So I just, I appreciate that.
And it's great to hear, Red. And I say, homie, just keep pushing, because, you know, when I started out, my goal was to get 300 subscribers, man. That was just my goal. I never thought that, you know, whatever stage that I have reached, I would have ever reached it, you know. So that was just, we never know how things is going to take off, man. So my advice is, you know, stay consistent as you possibly can, because I know it's a grind. Sometimes we get a little discouraged and this and that, but, you know, eventually you might look up, man, and, you know, you're doing well better than you ever thought you would have.
Yeah, for real, for real. Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that.
All right. And once again, homie, thank you for coming on my platform, sharing us with your wisdom, your knowledge. Once again, I just want to say, you guys, the brother served 30 years straight among some of these horrible conditions that he's explaining and talking about. And the dude is intelligent. He's logical. He's sensible. You know, he has all his mental faculties. And I don't think that can be brought up enough, man, because unless you've done time, you don't know how, you know, prison can drive you insane. It can make you angry, make you a whole bunch of negative things that when you do come back to the world, you cannot function, man. And so if this dude had never told you he went to prison, I honestly don't think we'd ever know. So once again, homie, thank you for coming on. Thank you for, you know, just everything you saying, and salute to you for once again being able to stand up under all those conditions.
All right, man. I appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that, man. Y'all check my channel out, man.
Give it to him one more time. What's the name of it?
OG Bloodshot Red Prison Media.
OG Bloodshot Red Prison Media, man. Y'all go there and check that out, man. Hey, thank you for the interview. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, you too, homie. Appreciate you.